Mr. President, the Internet has grown at an unbounded rate in the years since its inception, a phenomenon that no one can argue with. And much of that growth can be attributed to the light-touch regulatory approach that the government adopted in the early days of the web. As chairman of the Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Internet, I've worked hard to promote policies that encourage the private sector to invest in and grow the Internet ecosystem as a whole. All of that is jeopardized, however, if government bureaucrats have the ability to overregulate the digital world. And when it comes to overregulating the Internet, one need look no further than the Democrat-controlled Federal Communications Commission under President Obama. In a world that was turning away, literally turning away from the legacy telecommunications services and instead toward dynamic Internet applications, the FCC found its role gradually diminishing. This is an inevitable and good byproduct, I might add, of a more competitive environment brought about by technological innovation and successful light-touch policies. Yet the Obama FCC fought hard against this technological progress and instead pursued an aggressively activist and partisan agenda that put government edicts ahead of real consumer desires. And so over the last 2 years, the FCC has made a stunning bureaucratic power grab. First, the FCC stripped away the Federal Trade Commission's authority to police Internet providers and seized that for itself by recharacterizing such services as monopoly-era telecommunications. And then, in 2016, the FCC, which has little experience regulating Internet privacy, decided to turn our country's privacy laws on their head by abandoning the time-tested enforcement approach of the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. These actions by the FCC ignored both common sense and real-world data and instead focused on hypothetical harms of the future, ignoring years of Internet ecosystem precedent where everyone was treated the same. The FCC's 2016 broadband privacy regulations would apply only to certain parts of the Internet. This is a source of significant concern because at any particular time, Mr. President, consumers will not have reasonable certainty of what the rules are and how their privacy decisions will be applied. Are you at home on Wi-Fi? At home on a smartphone? Using your smartphone on a friend's Wi-Fi? Using the Internet at a library? Each of these could have very different privacy implications for a consumer because of the FCC's piecemeal approach to privacy, leading to more confusion and uncertainty, not increased privacy protections as promised. In enacting these lopsided rules, the FCC seems to have gone out of its way to disregard established FTC practice by creating new regulations that differ significantly from the FTC's tried and true framework. The FTC's privacy regime is clear, easy to understand, and applies evenly throughout the marketplace. By contrast, the FCC's rules are complex, confusing, and often lead to the same data being treated inconsistently online. Mr. President, the FCC's action would harm consumers in other ways as well. Now, even though no consumer wants to be in the dark about newer and cheaper services, the FCC rules actually make it more difficult for customers to hear about new, innovative offerings from their broadband providers. And because the FCC imposed heavy-handed data requirements on these Internet companies, they will have less ability to offer services that are tailored to their customers' needs and interests. Furthermore, the FCC unfairly distorted the marketplace when it imposed unnecessarily onerous privacy restrictions on broadband providers while leaving the rest of the Internet under the strong and successful regime at the FTC. When speaking about the economic opportunities the Internet now affords us, President Obama's last FCC chairman declared that, and I quote, "Government is where we will work this out," end quote. Government is where we will work this out. Well, Mr. President, I couldn't disagree more. I believe the marketplace should be the center of the debate over how our digital networks will function, not the FCC. And I believe consumers and job creators should be the ones deciding about new technologies, not the government. The resolution before us today is the first step toward restoring regulatory balance to the Internet ecosystem. And the best way for that balance to be achieved is for there to be a single, uniform set of privacy rules for the Internet, the entire Internet. Rules that appropriately weigh the need to protect consumers with the need to foster economic growth and continued online innovation. Mr. President, the FCC is simply the wrong venue for that effort. Its statutory scope is too narrow, and it lacks institutional expertise on privacy. The current chairman of the FCC and the FTC both recognize this, having jointly called for returning jurisdiction over broadband providers' privacy and data security practices to the FTC, and I quote, so that all entities in the online space can be subject to the same rules. Well, for those reasons, Mr. President, I support the resolution before us that would provide congressional disapproval of the Obama administration's misguided and unfair attempts to regulate the Internet, and I encourage my colleagues to support the resolution as well. And to those people who have heard that this resolution will somehow result in the elimination of all online protections for consumers, I can assure you those claims are simply unfounded scaremongering. If this resolution is enacted, it will only repeal a specific rulemaking at the FCC that has yet to be implemented. What we're talking about here hasn't even been implemented yet. It will not touch the FCC's underlying statutory authority. Indeed, the FCC will still be obligated to police the privacy practices of broadband providers as provided for in the Communications Act. The new chairman of the FCC confirmed this when he appeared before the Commerce Committee earlier this month. And no matter what happens with this resolution, the FTC will continue to have its authority to police the rest of the online world. Mr. President, it's my hope that once the Senate passes this resolution, the House will move quickly to take it up and to send it to the President for his signature. Because before our country can get back on the right track, we must first move past the damaging regulations adopted in the waning days of the Obama administration. And Mr. President, I want to thank Senator Flake for his leadership on this issue. Without his tireless efforts, we would not be here today standing ready to move decisively toward a better future for the Internet. Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to support the resolution that we will vote on tomorrow at noon.